The leather-bound ledgers still lined my home office shelves, their spines showing years of careful use. Each volume represented a year of meticulously documented transactions, contingency plans, and backup procedures I'd maintained throughout my 30-year career at Lancaster Financial. Redundant, they'd called them. Wasteful. Old-fashioned. I picked up the most recent volume, its pages filled with my precise handwriting. The board hadn't even bothered to look inside when they cleared out my office 6 months ago. They were too excited about their new fully digital transformation initiative to care about paper records. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Margaret. The voice was familiar, though I'd never heard it quite so desperate. Margaret Morrison? Speaking. I kept my tone neutral, professional. But I knew who it was. Robert Chun, CEO of Lancaster Financial. The man who had stood silent while the board terminated my position as Chief Risk Officer. We need you. The words tumbled out quickly, almost frantic. The systems are down. All of them. The backups, the redundancies, everything. We can't access any of our data. I closed my eyes, remembering my final presentation to the board 6 months ago. I had warned them about over-reliance on digital systems, about the importance of maintaining physical backups and analog contingency plans. They had laughed, politely of course, but they had laughed. When did it start? I asked, already knowing the answer. The financial news networks had been reporting on it all morning. The largest coordinated cyber attack in history, targeting financial institutions worldwide. 3 hours ago. Nothing's working. We can't access client records, transaction histories, nothing. The FBI's involved, but they're saying it could be days before systems are restored. We have thousands of clients who need access to their accounts, trades that need to be verified, transactions that need to be processed. And you need my paper backups, I finished for him. The silence on the other end was answer enough. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said, already reaching for my coat. Have security clear me for full access. Thank you, Robert breathed. Margaret, we. Save it, I interrupted, my voice firm but not unkind. We can discuss the past later. Right now, your clients need help. The drive to Lancaster Financial's headquarters brought back memories of countless early mornings and late nights. For 3 decades, I had walked through those doors building systems and procedures that some had called paranoid, others obsolete. But I had learned early in my career that digital convenience should never completely replace tried-and-true methods. The lobby was chaos when I arrived. Clients packed the space, their voices a mixture of anger and fear. Security guards tried to maintain order, while employees scurried about, helpless without their computers and smartphones. Robert met me at the elevator, his usual impeccable appearance showing signs of strain. His tie was loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. The situation's worse than I described, he said as we rode up to the executive floor. The attack encrypted everything, client data, transaction records, even our backup servers. The hackers are demanding ransom in cryptocurrency, but even if we paid, there's no guarantee we'd get our data back. I nodded, unsurprised. Take me to my old office. It's been converted to a conference room, he admitted, looking uncomfortable. But we haven't cleared anything out. It's all in storage on the same floor. The storage room was dark and dusty, but my organization system had survived. Dozens of leather-bound volumes stood in neat rows, each labeled by year and content type. Boxes of paper files lined the shelves, categorized and cross-referenced. I'll need these moved to the main conference room, I said, already pulling volumes from the shelves. And I need your best analysts, people who can read and process information quickly, who understand our systems but can work without computers. Robert nodded, already reaching for his phone before remembering it was useless. I'll send word through the floor managers. How many people do you need? 20 to start. Split them into teams, client records, active transactions, pending trades, and regulatory compliance. Each team needs at least one person who's been with the company more than 10 years. Someone who remembers how we did things before everything was digital. Within an hour, the main conference room had been transformed into an analog command center. My ledgers and files covered the massive table, with different stations set up for each team. The room hummed with focused energy as employees who had never worked with paper records learned from their more experienced colleagues. Here, I said, opening a ledger from 3 months ago. Every transaction is recorded with multiple reference points. Account numbers cross-reference with client files, which linked to transaction histories and verification documents. Everything's backed up in triplicate, with physical copies stored in 3 different locations. The younger analysts stared at the meticulous systems with newfound respect. One of them, a recent hire named Jason, ran his finger down a column of figures. "This is incredible," he murmured. "We can reconstruct entire client portfolios from these records." "Not just reconstruct them," I corrected. "These are legally binding records, maintained according to regulatory requirements. They're admissible in court and recognized by federal oversight committees." Robert stood in the doorway, watching as the teams began to find their rhythm. Client records were being pulled, transactions verified, and trade histories reconstructed. The work was slower than with computers, but it was steady, reliable, and most importantly, it was happening. "We're starting to get calls from other firms," he said quietly. "They're in the same situation. No records, no access, nothing." I smiled for the first time that day. Page 247 in the 2023 ledger. You'll find a list of industry contacts who maintained similar analog backup systems. Call them. We're going to need to coordinate. As the day wore on, the true value of those old-fashioned methods became increasingly clear. While other financial institutions remained paralyzed, Lancaster Financial began processing client requests. We couldn't execute new trades or perform complex transactions, but we could verify account balances, confirm recent activities, and provide clients with essential documentation. By evening, news of our functionality had spread. CNBC ran a story about the traditional methods that were keeping Lancaster Financial operational while other firms floundered. Our lobby was still full, but now with clients from other institutions, hoping we could help verify their recent transactions through our interconnected record systems. "Margaret," Robert said, catching me as I reviewed a particularly complex transaction reconstruction. "The board is meeting in an hour. They want you there." I raised an eyebrow. The same board that dismissed my concerns about digital vulnerabilities? He had the grace to look embarrassed. "Yes, but they're not looking to criticize now. They want to understand how we can implement your systems across the entire organization. Permanently." I closed the ledger I was holding, running my hand across its worn leather cover. "Tell them I'll be there. But first, I need to check something in the archives." As Robert left, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. This wasn't about vindication, though that certainly existed. This was about something more fundamental. The understanding that progress doesn't always mean abandoning the past. Sometimes the most innovative solution is remembering what worked before. I picked up another ledger, this one containing my notes on disaster recovery procedures. The board would need to see this one. They needed to understand that being old-fashioned wasn't about resisting change. It was about building systems that could withstand any challenge, whether digital or analog. The day wasn't over. The crisis wasn't solved. But as I watched the teams working together, blending traditional methods with modern knowledge, I knew we were witnessing something important. The recognition that true resilience comes from honoring the best of the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. The Lancaster Financial boardroom held a different energy now. Gone were the sleek tablets and laptops that usually cluttered the massive mahogany table. Instead, my leather-bound ledgers commanded attention, their presence a stark reminder of the digital vulnerability that had brought the financial world to its knees. The board members filed in slowly, their usual confidence replaced by something approaching humility. I recognized each face, the same faces that had nodded in agreement 6 months ago when declaring my methods obsolete. Now they looked at me with a mixture of respect and desperation. "Ms. Morrison," Elizabeth Chun, the board chair, began. "We owe you an apology." I opened the disaster recovery ledger, its pages filled with detailed contingency plans. "With all due respect, Mrs. Chun, apologies can wait. What we need now is action." For the next hour, I walked them through the systems I had built over 3 decades. Not just the paper records, but the entire philosophy behind them. Triple redundancy, distributed storage, hybrid digital-analog verification processes. It wasn't about choosing between old and new. It was about creating resilient systems that could survive any crisis. The attack encrypted our digital records, I explained. But encryption is meaningless against paper. The hackers can't hold hostage what they can't access. But more importantly, these records aren't just backups. They're part of an integrated system designed to maintain operational continuity under any circumstances. James Morrison, head of the technology committee, and no relation, leaned forward. But surely we can't go back to doing everything on paper. The volume of transactions alone. We don't have to, I interrupted, pulling out a slim volume labeled Modernization Proposals 2024. 6 months ago, I presented a plan for hybrid systems that would combine digital efficiency with analog security. You dismissed it as unnecessarily complex and expensive. Would you like to review it now? The silence was deafening. I opened the volume, revealing detailed blueprints for a revolutionary risk management system. Digital systems offer speed and convenience, but they're vulnerable to attacks we can't always predict. Traditional methods are slower, but virtually impenetrable to cyber threats. The solution isn't choosing one over the other. It's building systems that leverage the strengths of both. Over the next 2 hours, I outlined my vision for Lancaster Financial's future. Every digital transaction would have an analog shadow record, automatically generated and physically stored. Critical client data would exist in both digital and physical forms, with multiple verification pathways. Most importantly, the company would maintain the ability to operate fully on either system independently. The cost will be significant, Elizabeth noted, but her tone had changed from skeptical to contemplative. Less significant than what today's attack is costing us, Robert pointed out. Our competitors are still completely paralyzed. The regulators are talking about mandatory analog backup requirements for all financial institutions. Margaret's system wouldn't just protect us, it would put us years ahead of incoming regulations. The board's vote was unanimous. Not only would I be reinstated as Chief Risk Officer, but I would head a new division dedicated to implementing hybrid security systems across the organization. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. As the meeting concluded, Elizabeth held me back. There's something else, she said. The Federal Reserve has been in contact. They want to understand our ability to maintain operations during the attack. They're particularly interested in your hybrid system designs. I nodded, unsurprised. The financial system is only as strong as its weakest link. What happened today exposed vulnerabilities that affect national security. The Fed will want to establish new standards. They've requested your presence at an emergency meeting in Washington tomorrow. They're assembling a task force to develop new regulatory frameworks for financial institution security. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. While our tech teams worked with federal authorities to restore digital systems, I led the implementation of our new hybrid infrastructure. Young analysts who had never worked with physical records learned to appreciate the elegance of analog systems. Veteran employees who had resisted digital transformation began to see how traditional methods could enhance rather than oppose modern technology. The media attention was unexpected but inevitable. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature titled "Old School Saves New Finance," complete with photos of our analog command center in action. Harvard Business Review requested an article on hybrid risk management systems. My inbox filled with speaking invitations from financial conferences worldwide. But the real satisfaction came from watching the transformation within Lancaster Financial. The integration of traditional and modern methods created something entirely new, a resilient, adaptive organization that could face any challenge. 3 months after the attack, I stood in my restored office, now expanded to accommodate both digital terminals and physical record systems. The leather-bound ledgers had a new home in a custom-designed vault, their contents regularly updated and verified. On my desk, a tablet displayed real-time transaction data alongside a handwritten journal of daily operations. Robert knocked on my door, looking more relaxed than he had in months. "The Fed's new regulations just came through," he said, handing me a thick document. "They're calling it the Morrison Framework." I raised an eyebrow. "That's not necessary." "They disagree. Your system is becoming the industry standard. Every major financial institution is implementing some version of it. The regulators are saying this could prevent the next financial crisis." I thought about my 30 years at Lancaster Financial, about all the times I'd been called outdated, overcautious, old-fashioned. I thought about the young analysts who now sought my mentorship, eager to understand how traditional methods could enhance their digital expertise. "You know what the best part is?" Robert continued, settling into a chair. "The hackers never got their ransom. When they realized we could operate without our digital systems, they lost their leverage. The FBI used our paper records to help trace their operations. They made arrests this morning." I smiled, reaching for one of my ledgers. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to remember what we learned in the past. The board wants to discuss expansion, Robert said. Other companies are requesting consulting services, training programs. They want to understand our hybrid systems. This could be a whole new division. I nodded, already making notes in my journal. Innovation wasn't always about inventing something new. Sometimes it was about recognizing the value in what already existed and finding new ways to make it relevant. The next morning, as I walked through Lancaster Financial's lobby, I passed the newly installed display case. Inside, protected by bulletproof glass, sat one of my original ledgers. The plaque beneath it read, "Innovation meets tradition, the foundation of modern financial security." I smiled, remembering the day they had called my methods outdated. In the end, being old-fashioned hadn't meant being behind the times. It had meant understanding that true progress comes from building upon the best of what came before, not discarding it. My phone buzzed, another interview request, this time from Forbes. They wanted to do a cover story, "The Woman Who Saw Tomorrow by Looking to the Past." I made a note in my journal, then opened my tablet to check the day's security protocols. In the vault behind me, the leather-bound ledgers stood ready, a testament to the enduring value of traditional wisdom in our digital age. Some called it a revolution in financial security. I called it common sense. After all, the most powerful innovations often come from recognizing that something isn't old-fashioned. It's timeless.